And my next project is to delete the charcoal canister that's actually underneath your spare wheel well. Mine kind of leaks and I get some fumes, so I'm going to divert the gas tank vent into my own tube here, fuel hose, 3H hose, and just run it to the end of an air filter and then run it out the back of the car. I'll show you guys all that later. But right now, before I even start, this guy is your EVAP airlock, your EVAP. And unless you have the purge valve coated out of your ECU, you're going to get a check engine light as soon as you unplug it the next time you do a cold start. So what you need to do is actually splice in a 1K ohm, 1/4 watt resistor. I'm not entirely sure if I should use 1/4 watt, half watt, so I'm going to install one, drive around with it over the next day or whatever and see if I get a code, and if not, I'm going to connect it in there permanently. What it looks like with the resistor on there, I'll make it look nicer. I'm just going to drive around a little bit and make sure that the check engine light doesn't come on, but haven't driven the car today, turned it on, no check engine light, so I have high hopes for it. This is what the charcoal canister looks like. It's under your spare wheel well, and it basically vents vapors from the gas tank and circulates them to the throttle body at the front, actually intake manifold, to reburn some unburnt fumes on startup, generally on cold startups. As you might be able to see in the back, there is a blue hose coming off. One of the blue hoses from the charcoal canister runs the length of your car and connects all the way into this purge valve. On startup, the ECU tells it to open a little bit so that those vapors that may be built up in that blue tube can flow through the valve into that black hose, which for now you'll just have to trust me runs to the back of your intake manifold, and it basically reintroduces those unburnt fumes in there so they can be burned again. This guy often throws codes. I recommend just replacing it unless you are going to be a race car that does not see a whole bunch of regular miles, because this does kind of help the environment a little bit and there's no detriment to keeping it in your car. So now we'll go over the process. What's the process? It's pretty straightforward. Starting at the front, once you've removed this connector in cold startups, you will get a check engine light, P0443. What I'm going to do is cut this off, and I'm going to put a 1K ohm 1/4 watt resistor in line, and that should trick the computer into thinking that the valve is working properly. Next thing to do is to cap off this black hose. The next time I have my intake manifold off and have access to that spot, I will cap it off at that connector. But for now, I'm just going to put a bolt into the hose and it'll be capped for now. We remove the valve, and then that blue hose is the top blue hose here. I apologize, it's dark. Removing this electrical connector from your charcoal canister solenoid will not trip CEL, so you don't have to worry about the check engine light there. Like I said before, this top one leads to that purge valve in the front, so we can just completely remove it. It is no longer connected at the front once we delete it. This blue hose goes into the wheel well, which is where we will access where it connects to, and then we will plumb a line off of that to basically rerouting the vapor line. This black hose is just a vent for the charcoal canister, and it actually terminates on the other side of that wall, so it can be totally removed. We'll divert our attention to the rear. We need to take this off. You can see that this is actually the filler hose for our gas tank. So a lot of our gas tank and our expansion tank stuff is behind here. Okay, so when you have the rear cover off, you'll see this black tube. This is the thick black tube that goes into your charcoal canister. You can see this suspends the atmosphere, so we can actually just unscrew this and remove the tube without worrying about it. You'll see these two blue tubes. Those are the same ones that go to the charcoal canister. This one runs to the front of the car, and we can actually just completely remove this. We don't need it anymore. This line is connected to this hose, and this hose goes up into your expansion tank. These vapors and being sent to the charcoal canister. So what we did was we bought some 3/8 fuel hose, and I looped it twice around the rear bumper support. I just snaked it around, and then we're going to splice one end onto the breather, and then on the other end, I'm going to cut the hose where we just have this filter. And this will just sit back here and will take the place of our hose that used to go to the charcoal canister. So this is basically effectively replacing our charcoal canister.
The reason we loop it twice is just so that we won't create a siphon here and siphon out our entire tank. I cut the blue hose off. I left a bit in there so that I could slide this 3/8 hose over it, and then I just hose clamped it. This now loops around twice. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off and install my filter. So here's the breather hose installed. You can see that the top hose that comes down from the expansion tank is now plugged into my hose. I left a little bit of the blue hose, about an inch, and then put the 3/8 on top of it, looped it around the rear bumper support twice, and then terminated it with this air filter. And this stuff will just sit back here and be happy. I'm now going to cut this, because remember this goes to the front of the purge valve that we just disconnected. And then we're going to just remove this as well. So it's actually a plastic panel with 4 plastic nuts that you can remove down here, and it gives you access to the bottom part of this bumper. You can see where my hoses are, and then before the blue lines were being ran through here, clipped, and then through this hole that has a grommet in it. You can see the black hose just goes through here. So we're just going to pull these 2 hoses straight through with the black hose, and then we can pull the canister straight out. Okay, now that everything's disconnected, we should be able to just pull these blue hoses through. Pull this black hose through. There we are. Remove the charcoal canister. There you are. 70 pounds worth of weight savings. Don't ask me to verify. The last thing to do is, that blue hose is the one that's just left disconnected in the wheel well. So it's not connected to anything. We can disconnect it from the purge valve there, cut it back as far back as you want, get rid of the purge valve, and then the black tube that comes out the bottom of it, we're going to cap it off. Here's your purge valve. Blue hose comes in through here, black hose comes out the bottom. Here's the bracket. These just screw directly into the side of the car, so we'll put that in the spare parts box. The blue hose is now disconnected there, and later I'll chop that back a little bit. Our other hose that was coming out the bottom is right here. I ran out of hose clamps, so I just put some gasket maker inside there and screwed the bolt in. Once I have a hose clamp, I'll go in there, cut it in there, and then make it look nice. For now, I'm just going to zip tie this to here. This wire that has a resistor on it seems to be working just fine. All I'm going to do is cut this back here, and then delete this wire in a clean way. Looks like the resistor works, so just a 1K 1/4 watt resistor seems to work just fine. Go ahead and give her a shot. In theory, cold start should not get check engine light.